Well, we are back. Episode 60. It's a good one. Big one.
Yeah. A lot
Happy
of fun.
anniversary. No, I just mean like 60th episode in general.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Not
It was a
bad.
good decade for
The
America.
60s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
JFK. The end of it was like the start of the Vietnam War, which is everyone's favorite war.
Yep.
And
Racism was almost in its prime.
yes,
I'm pretty sure. Prime years, peak years.
a lot of good Celtics teams, which is a somber way to start this podcast.
It's an unfortunate segue, but a good segue nonetheless. I don't know if you had that planned, but nah, man. At the time of recording, it's Tuesday, and Tommy Heinsohn died today. Crazy.
Yeah.
All things considered, the way this fucking year's gone, it's not that crazy. But that was one where it's like what else? Like who else? Like I was just going through a list today, man, and it's like, if you a year ago today, if you told me Kobe Bryant, Alex Trebek, Tommy Heinsohn, Regis, Sean Connery, who else?
Chadwick Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman was another shocking one, and obviously not to mention like hundreds of thousands of people dying with the pandemic going on. This is just it's almost like it's crazy. Like it's almost like too unbelievable to be true. Like as much as people joke like, oh, 2020, worst year ever. Yes, I would wholeheartily agree.
Yeah, I don't think that's hyperbole.
In my handful of years being on this godforsaken planet. But when did you, I guess I assume we both heard it about the same time. It was like mid-afternoon today. How did you find out? Twitter?
Twitter. Yep.
Yeah. Twitter. And it's funny because I saw someone posted something, but the tweet didn't say RIP anywhere. It just said something about like Tommy. And I was like, oh God, like what now? He get kicked out of like a nursing home or something. And then like you refresh Twitter and it's like, especially where we live and I think are like who we follow and vice versa, it just took over the timeline.
Yep.
Big time. Like Boston media people, Celtics players. And I said it, like I said, this year's been a real gut punch, not only as far as celebrities, but just everything going on in general. This one hit a little different, I think. There was a time where it felt a little close to the Kobe one. Kobe was more obviously shocking. I don't know if you'd say it's more tragic. I mean, they both died, but just like is one where it's like any other year, if you told me like Tommy Heinsohn died, it's like, okay, like I guess that makes sense. But just with everything going on lately, it's like, oh my God, dude. Like
one thing after another.
Great way to put it.
And we had just finished talking with Shaughnessy, who was saying like,
wild.
We've heard this. It's been in the news that Tommy wasn't doing too well. And
good point.
I remember there was an update from Mike Gorman at some point over the summer. I think he put it on Twitter that he's like, I just visited Tommy. He's in good spirits. So, and I feel like whenever someone says that they visited someone, you have to think that he was either like at the hospital or he was recovering at his house. So
what did he die from?
I don't know. Hasn't been disclosed.
Did he have cancer? Was he sick?
I've heard them say that he was sick and they've more so just said, he's dealing with some health complications or health issues. So they've never really disclosed it. So I don't know if that's him just being like, I don't want that out there, specifically, but
yeah, no, that's interesting. Cause I'm trying to think, what was he doing he obviously wasn't traveling this season.
Right.
Was he in the studio at all this year?
Yeah, so he did a combination of some home games and mostly studio, where they pretty much have Scal full time in Tommy's place with the occasional home game with Tommy.
Gotcha, that's right. But still, I mean, that wasn't terribly long ago. It's like 7 or 8 months ago. But no, a big blow, and it's just crazy how beloved someone like that was like to this Celtics Boston community. Like that guy was like Mr. And between we just wrapped up an interview we'll get to shortly, but between that and this, I was just going through basketball reference on like Wikipedia and stuff. Like, dude, this dude as a player and as a coach was baller, like big time numbers guy. But even just after that, most people I think our age know him for his commentating and announcing and just being like the personification of the Celtics and like Boston and grit. And like we joke around about like Tommy points and stuff like that. I've always said it. Like I was saying it to someone today, like Celtics players wanted to get Tommy points. Those weren't just like bullshit things. Like Marcus Smart went out to get Tommy points.
Mm-hmm.
There's guys who like, I think negotiated Tommy points at like contract time. I don't think they'll show up on Basketball Reference or literally anywhere else, but
yeah,
I'd argue they should.
There's definitely a leaderboard somewhere out there with Tommy Award winners.
I'd say there is. I'm certainly not on it, but there's other people that are. So
you've never really been deserving. You got the talent, but definitely not the hustle.
We'll talk about this later. Dude, just looking at this, because I think it was someone who tweeted it like, Tommy Heinsohn has literally been a Celtic for like 60 years.
Yeah.
Like something like absurd as a player. Then did he go right into the coach?
He may have taken a couple years off.
Yeah, because I think, let's see. He won his first title as a coach in 74. He won his last title as a player, I think, late 60s, early 70s. Oh, 65. But still, that doesn't mean he retired then. But I think he played 9 years and won 8 titles. Let me see here.
Pretty good resume.
Not bad. Certainly efficient with his time.
Mm-hmm.
He only played 9 years, 56 to 65, and won 8-time NBA champion. It's funny how they list it. It says 8-time NBA champion, 1957, 1959 through 1965. 6-time NBA All-Star, 4-time All-NBA second team, Rookie of the Year, retired number, obviously, first team All-American, second team All-American, excuse me. He hit for the cycle. He won the hat trick in college. First, second, third team All-American. Went to Holy Cross. Ever heard of it?
I have.
Certainly a good school.
Yep.
Better than that bullshit school you went to. His number's retired there. Oh, God. You know what number he wore in college?
Oh, God. I have 2 guesses.
You're right.
One is the number of hours in a day.
Yeah. Yep.
That's the one?
Just stop there. That's the one. Yeah, 24.
Okay.
And then as a coach, he won a couple rings, coach of the year, 4-time NBA All-Star game head coach. That must have been a fucking party playing for Tommy's All-Star team.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a borderline good time.
Yeah, and I was reading something today. I know it's a well-known story, and I should have looked into it a little better, but basically he was a big part of the reason why either contracts or TV agreements are the way that they are, because him and the players in 64 threatened to either ban or boycott a game. It may have been the All-Star game, actually, unless the contract situation was improved and they worked that into like the whatever was the collective bargaining agreement. And then I read another thing which I thought was hilarious and a throwback to that time period. It was a little bio that said, the stuff that he's into, which basketball, obviously commentating. He's a pretty well-known like painter and a really good artist.
Yes.
The fourth thing was that he was also an insurance salesman. That's why
I got into insurance.
While he played, he was selling insurance on the side.
Ultimate hustler, dude. Ultimate hustler.
Which is why you're not a hustler.
Correct.
Because you're doing 100%. The insurance thing, but not playing basketball.
I know. I'm a bitch. All right. I know. I tried it. I couldn't do it.
We'll talk about it.
He would go into town, drop 20 and 10 on you, and save you a bunch of money on car insurance. Like he just did it all, dude. He put up numbers. I mean, I'm just going through his basketball reference. This is a great website, by the way. Basketballreference.com. If any of our specific listeners ever want to check it out sometime. It's a great way to compare 2 players and make a pretty easy solution on who the better player is.
Yes. Especially power forward. Well, it's not specific to position, but if you'd like to narrow it down to power forward and center in the 2000s, you could do it.
You can do it. I'll show you how. Just hit our DMs. Dude, he put these numbers he's putting up don't sound great, but when you consider he played with Bill Russell, who I assume to put up the numbers Bill Russell put up would have to have the ball a pretty good amount of time. He's putting up like 22-10, 21-10, 22-9. Even his last year in the league, 13-6, not bad. And even being serious, it is interesting. Like you mentioned, we had our episode with Shaughnessy earlier, and we asked him about Tommy. And what's crazy is that was like a last minute thing. Like we were ready to sign off. You're just like, oh shit, like hey, by the way, like what's working with Tommy like? And he just went off, had some nice things to say to him. But he, like you said, he's like, he mentioned, his health was a concern. He was a smoker. I assume he did his fair share of partying. I mean, when you win 8 championships, that's
at least
8
one
parties
bottle of champagne.
in a row. Yeah, seriously. You celebrating. Look at the fucking Lakers. Like celebrating a championship, you get turned.
Yeah.
And if you do that 8 years in a row, or however many years in a row, 7 years in a row, that's a lot. That'll take its toll on you.
And we see the guys celebrating today who don't even have anything to do with the championship. So imagine being a good player celebrating.
You aren't lying. Either you get messed up on champagne or they mail you a women's watch in the mail, and that's what you have to remember it by. Shout out Cedric Maxwell. We owe that dude a watch. We should start a GoFundMe and get him a nice watch.
Hello, Mr. Nice Watch.
Hello, Mr. Nice Watch. But no, sad day. R.I.P. Tommy. It's going to be different. It was really sad, man. I think you mentioned Gorman earlier, but I think Gorman, did you see it? Did he go on a show or something? He was talking about Tommy today on camera.
He went on NBC Boston.
Oh, okay. That's sad. Because dude, that's basically like an old guy, like losing one of his best friends.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like when you get up in that age, it's like, you probably only have it's not unusual for your friends to die at that age, but someone like that, who you've been sitting next to, calling games, reliving classic sport. Because plus, remember, they call for the Celtics. You know what I mean? It's not like they call for the Cavaliers or something. Like there's been a lot of history and a lot of good games and a lot of fun runs in that time period. That's got to be tough. I think. I think you could tell it was even taking a toll on him the last few years. I think just going through working with Scal and Tommy not being there and shit like that. I think it broke up the dynamic a little bit, but that was tough. And, not for nothing, Mike Gorman's getting up there in age too. Was he in his 80s, late 70s?
He's, I believe, early 70s, like 73.
Early 70s.
Like
okay. Because Tommy was 86.
Yeah.
I mean, that's old, but that's not terribly old.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's old, but it's not super old. So.
Right. And we're not age scientists, but I think we're qualified to make that judgment.
I'm not at all. But yeah, no. So like, I mean, we're gonna get into our interview. So not to, get too down in the dumps here. We actually had a really fun conversation tonight with, we'll get right into that shortly, with Rich Keefe. Great guy. Most recently on Dale and Keefe on WEEI radio. He has his own podcast, which sounds awesome. I've only heard it a couple of times, but it's called the Dork Podcast. They talk a lot of movies, comics, superheroes, just all sorts of cool shit. And he has a lot of local roots too. He worked, like you said, on the Nashua station, worked a lot of things in Manchester. And we even had a few shout outs for some loyal listeners of our show. So
we did.
All things considered, really cool episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got to pay the GOAT his dues.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we take care of that, we got to get back to talking about Tommy. So I'm going to go out to the pasture, handle that portion of the episode.
Do you need help? Should I drive up?
No, we made payroll this week, so they're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. It wasn't easy.
Boy, howdy. Yeah, you should see mine.
But I had an idea. I think before we get into the Rich Keefe episode, I think we should revisit some of a couple quick conversations we had with some previous guests who had some nice stories about Tommy. I know we talked to Greg Dickerson about it. You mentioned Shaughnessy pretty recently. And then we'll get into our interview with Rich Keefe, which was a lot of fun. Talked a little Patriots, talked a little, what else the hell did we talk about? Some of his time in Nashua.
Yep. Beer, the Portland, Maine scene.
Beer. Mentioned Portland, Maine. We did. We went there. And an election year, for Christ's sakes.
We did cover a lot. Yeah.
We cover a lot.
His drinks of choice, movies.
Yep.
A lot of good stuff.
But, yeah. So let's do that. Anything else before we transition over to some Tommy talk and our interview with Rich?
No. R.I.P. Tommy.
R.I.P. Tommy. Here we go.
Oh, wait, Dan, I have to ask you one thing. I know we said we'd let you go. I have to ask one thing. What's been your experience with Tommy? Have you had much interaction with him? Tommy Heinsohn.
Tommy.
So again, I grew up when Tommy was a player, and he was a great player. You know, he was a smoker, so his career kind of got shortened. But it's bothersome to me that like generations of fans just think of him as, you know, Fred Flintstone, the kind of cartoonish broadcaster who's great at what he does. But I mean, he's a Hall of Fame coach and a Hall of Fame player. He's Hall of Famer on 2 levels. His rookie year was Bill Russell's rookie year, but rookie of the year was Tommy Heinsohn, not Bill Russell, because Russell arrived late because of the Olympics.
It's a decent feather in his cap.
Yeah.
Game 7 of the finals, Tommy's rookie year, he goes for 37 with 24 rebounds in an overtime victory over St. Louis. Everybody still talks about Bill Russell, but Tommy Heinsohn, look up his rookie year, Game 7, when they win their first championship. He is the man. He's underrated as a player. And of course, now he's 85-year-old beast. He walks around, he drives around, does Comcast at night and all that stuff. It's remarkable. And, you know, he's had health issues and we're all worried about him a little bit, but long live Tommy. Hope he goes forever.
He was so good that St. Louis team moved to a different city afterwards.
Yes, thank you.
Get the hell out of here. He chased him out of town.
Yeah. I think Tommy's underrated. I've seen some pictures of him as a coach.
Oh my God.
A very snazzy dresser.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They had a
First
lot of the plaid going on, and the big ties and the long hair and all that. But hey, he won. His Celtics beat the Bucks with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Game 7 on the road in the finals, and then they flew back commercials. You know, changing planes in O'Hare. I mean, that's how it was.
No easy feat.
This is one of your good friends, Mr. Tommy Heinsohn.
No, Tommy. I love Tommy.
Yeah. So I'm going to play a clip.
Okay.
It's 15 seconds, and when the clip is done, I'm just going to repeat what he says so that in case the audio doesn't like sound great. And then
can I tell a quick after that? Can I tell just a real super quick Tommy Heinsohn story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Love Tommy Heinsohn. So, all right, I guess I'll translate the clip afterwards, and then I have a question for you about it.
Okay.
So here goes.
I took a look at Baines in the shower. He looks like all of Australia. He is really put together.
All right. So if anyone couldn't hear that, he was calling a game from 2017 season. Aaron Baines was on the team, and he said, I took a look at Baines in the shower. He looks like all of Australia. ... He is really well put together. Mm-hmm. My question to you, Greg Dickerson, is can you confirm or deny? And if that's not true, is he more like Perth, Australia, or more like Sydney? Like, what was Tommy talking about?
All right. I can't tell you because I wasn't around for the Aaron Baines days, so I didn't see. As someone who is, God, how do I put this? As somebody who was burdened with the Irish curse, I took it upon myself in the many years that I covered teams in locker rooms to never look below the Mason-Dixon line. Okay, because as I said, I am fully cursed with the I'm fully bedridden with the Irish curse. So I tried to avoid those things. Try to avoid looking in those areas as much as possible. And I can't speak to Aaron Baines at all because I never covered him. Never covered him. Is that a good cop-out answer?
All right. I guess the jury's still out. I just want to...
He's a big man. It was John Hamm. They said the same thing about John Hamm. So I'm just going to take the internet for its word that John Hamm's well endowed. I'm going to say the same thing about Aaron Baines. That Tommy's never been wrong. How's that? Tommy has never been wrong.
No,
in subjects, in those certain subjects.
Yeah, and when he's passionate about something, he's
spot on about something. Yes, he's not going to be that passionate and be wrong about it. No.
All right.
Tommy knows a thing or two about. Well, I may have been told stories about Larry Siegfried from way back when.
Oh yeah.
Tommy may have mentioned. Yeah, I mean, Larry Siegfried was well known for his genitalia. So it just Tommy used to talk about that quite a bit. I'm lying about that. He never once talked about Larry Siegfried's genitalia. Never once. The only thing Tommy ever talked about at dinner was politics. He loved in basketball. Loved his politics.
Really?
One time in Cleveland where there's almost a fist fight between Mike and Tommy because Tommy may have come to the middle a little bit, but Tommy's always been way right and Mike's way left. So we had an argument about something, and I'm in the middle politically.
Mm-hmm.
But those two guys were on the other side, and we were in Cleveland at this restaurant. And those two, our producer had to step in and, all right, guys, so let's eat. Let's change the subject. But
let's have some sideline chili.
Right, exactly. Let's have a little side. Let's have a side of chili, and let's just calm down, and let's not talk about politics, and let's not have our play-by-play and color guy rip each other's throats out the night before a game. But it was all good and good. It was all good.
Oh yeah.
Some of my favorite nights were just a great guy, and doesn't have a cell phone. I mean, he's just he's like your 85-year-old grandfather, except he's nuts about basketball. He's just you don't trust him with the remote. He doesn't have a cell phone. God forbid he doesn't have any sort of I don't think he still does to this day. He didn't back then. Didn't have any sort of smartphone or anything, but he was Tommy, and Tommy could. And I'm not sure he could do it now, but like 5 years ago, he could get away with saying just about anything because he's Tommy. He can get away with anything. Now, I don't know. Maybe not so much. Not in this culture.
I know. Sometimes when I was, even this season watching the game, I'm like, "Uh-oh, Tommy, like you're getting close to the line. We might want to."
Do you have any Tommy Heinsohn art?
I don't, but I've seen I've seen plenty of the specials whenever they talk about his other passions.
Oh, he's a phenomenal. I mean, I've seen him in the midst of painting on the road. Phenomenal. I've got a Celtics Christmas ornament that is painted by Tommy. It's just phenomenal. It's just you would think that a real live, that's how he makes his bread and that's how he gets paid. Artist did it. And from what I know, I don't think he took it up until after he started playing. So he took it on later and he took it up later in life. But he's a phenomenal artist.
Wow. Yeah, he's a talented guy, and
he's an interesting man. All right, he is an interesting man. I love the guy.
Funny to picture him whenever they show clips of him in his coaching days. Him in like his super dapper '70s sport
coat and everything. That great stuff.
Yeah, the hair.
Plaids,
man.
Jack. Those are the good. I mean, he was no Jack Ramsey, but he was pretty close.
No.
Love it. But yeah, man. So as promised, here's our conversation with Rich Keefe. You can hear him on Dale and Keefe in the mornings on EEI. You guys are 10 to 2, right?
Yes.
Monday through Friday. And then
everyone's favorite steering wheel position.
10 to 2.
10 to 2.
Right. Good man.
And then as we were just talking briefly before we started, you have a podcast you run too, the Dork podcast. So again, man, thanks for hopping on. Let's start here. So let's kind of start with most recent news. I had a pretty simple question I'd love to get a professional's opinion on. Was last night's Patriots game a must lose and they blew it?
Well, I think for Trevor Lawrence it was. For Trevor Lawrence, it was a must lose. I still think Justin Fields is on the table. Now, he'll probably be the second or third pick. He'll probably be super high as well. But because you're going up against the Jets, who are winless, who are now 0-9, and you had a chance to pull within a game of them with another game in hand, I am fully I was wrong about this season. I thought they were going to be pretty good. They are not. So I am all about getting that next great quarterback. And it was just so frustrating the way the game played out because they were down 10 and you're like, holy crap, they're going to lose. And then they come back.
This is going to happen.
And you're like, all right, what does 3-5? What does 3-5 get them? Like, I don't feel like they're a playoff team. So you're going to end up with some pick like 11 or 12. And it's going to be like, all the good quarterbacks are going to be gone, and we're going to be in the same situation as Patriots fans going into next year as we were going into this year.
Correct. So that's interesting. You mentioned you thought – so do you mean you think they still have a chance at Fields today, or you did if they lost yesterday?
Yeah. No, even today, because they're 3-5, and yes, they have another game against the Jets, but outside of that game against the Jets, none of those games are gimmies. Like, I know the Texans aren't great. The Chargers don't have a great record. I think they're kind of frisky, though. I think they're a frisky team. But there's a chance they could lose all those other games and try to win and still finish 4-12. And if you're 4-12, that puts you pretty close to the top pick. It's not number 1 because of the Jets, but you're close.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's like, I mean, the Jets will be there. I think the Redskins will be, well, the Redskins and Giants tough because they have to play each other again.
I was going to say the NFC, that's the beauty of the NFC East is they're going to start beating each other and get to 5 or 6 wins. I think Jacksonville's the other
Jags
big one.
too. Good call.
Yeah, that's the one you got to watch out for.
What do you think, Rich? What do you think that Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields were thinking when they were watching the game? Like, were they rooting? I would think that if I was one of those guys, I'd be rooting for the Patriots to lose in hopes, like, at least I could maybe go to one of those teams.
Yeah, I think especially Trevor Lawrence, who just seems like the obvious number 1 pick, he's got to be watching this saying, I don't want to go to the Jets. Now, he'll in all likelihood have a different head coach. It won't be Adam Gase. So I don't think it'll be as bad. I know some people have wondered, would he hold out, like not hold out, but would he pout like Eli Manning and like make sure he gets traded on draft night, or God forbid, go back and play another year at Clemson just to avoid having to go to the Jets. I don't think it'll come to that, but I'm sure like he was hoping, hey, if the Patriots would be a great spot. Like I know they're bad this year, but they got the coaching. They feel like they can turn it around quicker than these other teams. So I'm sure they're hoping that like a decent team somehow winds up with a top pick, but that rarely happens.
Yeah, it's tough because I mean I think worst case scenario this year is like 7-9, 8-8, miss the playoffs, and just get like the 18th pick in the draft. That's
100%. And then you pick like a decent enough linebacker or D lineman, and you're like, okay, you need a hole, but then now you're going into the next year. You're like, who's your quarterback? Who's your quarterback again?
I forgot about that. Yeah. No, it's funny. I was listening to, I assume a very close personal friend of yours, Mutt, tonight on the radio. Yeah. And he was talking about, people, it was a really good point. Seriously, he's like, everyone's talking about tank for Trevor, tank for Justin, blah, blah, blah. He's like, there's still a lot of value to getting a top 5 pick, even if you don't get one of those guys, because that means you have a top 5 first round, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round pick, which is something we haven't seen in 20 years.
Yeah, that is a really good point. And I think it's one where, let's say they end up picking like 6 and they can't get the top 2 quarterbacks, maybe even the top 3, depending on how it all shakes out. Well, you could still take a really good player at 6, and then your second round pick has a lot of value. You could trade back into the first round and get maybe the BYU quarterback Wilson or the Alabama quarterback, or like whoever the 4th or 5th quarterback is. You probably have a chance to get with your second pick because it does have a lot of value. But I just feel like you're so close to being able to control your own destiny essentially, and just pick Justin Fields and go from there and be like, all right, we have our quarterback for the next, 10, 12 years, hopefully. And rather than like, okay, great, you beat the Jets, and in a couple of weeks, maybe they beat the Texans. It's like, to what end? It's not a playoff team.
Also barely beat the Jets. It'd be different if they won by like 40 and Cam threw for 400 yards and other guys got going and we saw some signs of hope.
Yeah, and if they looked like they were head and shoulders above the Jets, I'm with you. You could maybe talk yourself into like, all right,
momentum thing.
Yeah, they were struggling early on, but they snapped that losing streak and they're going to turn it around. But nope, they literally needed to kick a 51-yard field goal at the horn in order to win.
It was the miracle at Meadowlands.
It was
2020 edition.
One of the all-time great games. Yep.
So let me ask you this: What do you think? Do you think they're more likely to do something like you said and finish with 3 or 4 wins, or maybe like pull off a 10-6 and sneak into the playoffs?
It's probably in between that. It's probably. Yeah, because like again, you still have Belichick. So what happens is in a close game, because you have a bad roster, but you have a good coach, and so the Jets have a bad roster, bad coach. So when the game's close, they're gonna have 12 men on the field, or they're gonna throw a bad pick, or like they're gonna do the stupid stuff. And so the Patriots will probably beat the Jets again. They might beat the Texans. They might beat one of the LA teams, and they'll probably be like 6-10. And you're gonna say, what is this? Like that. They're probably not bad enough to be 2-14, but they're certainly not good enough to be 9-7.
Yeah. No, I agree. And their schedule is kind of funky too. I was looking at it earlier. There's one back-to-back where I swear it's at LA Chargers and then it's at LA Rams. on
Yeah,
Thursday.
it's interesting because when that schedule first came out, it was pre-COVID, and I think they announced that they were going to stay out there. But the NFL protocols might be different. I don't know if they're going to make them come home or what, because that's a long time away from your home facility. I don't know what the rule is now.
Wouldn't it be safer to stay instead of traveling?
I think it would be. Yeah, I think it would be. But they got to figure out how they do all of that. But yeah, that's sort of a weird one. But I mean, I guess it's better than splitting it up and going to LA once in September and then like 3 weeks later going back to LA. So. And those teams are both weird too, like the Rams and Chargers. Some weeks they both look great, other weeks they look horrible. So I don't know what to make of those ones.
Well, Soapy, you work part-time for the CDC. What do you think is better, them travel or stay?
Things are definitely quieting down in Los Angeles with it being a small town. So they should be able to just, keep things as is, play them back to back, maybe on consecutive nights. Who knows?
Yeah, why not?
Maybe it's the double header.
Go ahead.
The Red Sox do it all the time.
They did it all the time. That's how baseball was able to play almost 60 games this year.
They play hundreds of games.
7-inning double headers.
Rich, do you think it's being overlooked that no one's talking about the fact that 11-5 is still in play?
They could win out. they could absolutely they could win out. And it's amazing too, because we were talking with James White today, and you look at his career with the Patriots. The most games he's ever lost in a regular season is 5. And it was 2 years ago, and they won the World Series. They won the Super Bowl at 11-5. And it was sort of like a weird regular season team, and then they put it all together and they won the whole thing. But the next loss he has is going to be the most losing season that he's had, which is nuts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you think they have any chance against the Rams? Not the Rams. The Ravens next weekend.
Is that spread come out yet? Early spread?
I bet it is. I haven't seen it. It's got to be pretty significant. The game's in New England, but with no fans, it's not like a huge advantage or anything.
Yeah.
Right.
The Ravens, I feel like we're going to be able to run all over them, like just nonstop. And so
can't help but agree.
I don't think they have a chance. No, I don't.
I can't put it. That's got to be at least a touchdown, 7-5, maybe even higher. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting because I mean, we talk all the time about just people. I guess us, you have like, we call them like Patriots blinders, where it's like you put this roster on any other uniform, any other team, and you're like, this is an abomination. Like this offense is ridiculous. But because it's New England, because you never know what can happen. We barely lose to Seattle, and people are saying, oh, this is a Super Bowl team. The whole thing in Kansas City. Even after like we beat the Raiders, people are like, all right, Cam was in the MVP discussions. Here we go. It's like, no, like this has to be one of the more overblown 3-point wins over maybe arguably the worst team in the NFL in the last 10 years, at least.
Yeah, it's more than that. It's one of the worst of all time. Like if you look at like the stats, like the stats back that up. Like their point differential is like historically bad. Their offense, like I think they had like 7 total touchdowns going into the week or something nuts. So yeah, they're terrible. And it's funny because last year the Patriots were 12-4, made the playoffs, won the division and all that. But if you really just looked at the offense, it was not good. Like Brady covered up for a lot of it. Like the receivers, they had Edelman, but he was playing through an injury, but it was just Edelman. They had no tight ends, and the running game kind of sucked because, Devlin went down. They had some injuries on the offensive line, and it was kind of a non-factor. But they played a lot of bad teams early, and so they got out to this great record, and we kind of were like, oh, they're 12-4, they won the division, but they lost to all the good teams, and then their offense was just they were showing signs of this team isn't very good. Like look at the skill position guys around the league. Patriots were right at the bottom.
Well, I think last year they started 8-0, right?
Yeah,
was it the year? 8-0. Okay, you're 8-0, and then people are still like, this team. I don't know if I buy in yet.
Well, it was weird because
then they lost to the Ravens.
Then right, you're 100%. They lost to the Ravens, and at that point, I think Baker Mayfield was like far and away the best quarterback that they had faced in that 8-game stretch. It was all back. It was like an injured Ben Roethlisberger, but then it was like all these guys were banged up. Like wasn't it Luke Falk for the Jets? It was like crazy the lineup that they had.
Probably.
And the defense was scoring touchdowns. They were shutting teams out, and you're like, oh my God, this defense is fantastic. But then when they played anybody good, whether it was Baltimore or Kansas City, it just, and then the playoffs against Tennessee, you're like, all right, I guess this team's not that good.
And it turned out they weren't that good.
No,
And
they
here we are.
weren't.
And they're certainly not
Spoiler
very good now. Yeah.
Right. And then
If you
but I
haven't
don't-
caught up. Yeah.
I didn't think it would be this bad. I really
Me
didn't.
neither. I didn't
At this
either.
point, I was like, "There's no way." For the last 20 years, the Patriots have been so good. They're always a contender, and then this year to fall off so quickly, so dramatically, was a bit of a shock.
Mm-hmm.
If for some strange reason there's a 30 for 30 on this season, it's gonna start with I don't know, Cam like throwing it straight into the ground in front of him, a record scratch like, you're probably wondering how I got here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna be that play of, I think it was Gunnar Olszewski, whoever just got like helicoptered.
Oh, when he gets
like, on a punt
helicoptered, you're like, what is this?
Record scratch.
It's gonna start with 3 months of talk radio being like, I think they're gonna start Jarrett Stidham, and then all of a sudden be like, no, they signed Cam. Like that's what it's gonna.
What
be.
If I told you?
Yeah,
dun, dun.
Speaking of talk radio, Rich, you seem to be familiar with that a little bit.
I listen from time to time. Yeah,
got it.
Yeah.
So obviously you're in Boston doing the thing with WEEI. Back in the day, my roommate actually remembers listening to you on AM 900.
Yes.
So back then, were you living? Obviously, the station is like right on Main Street in Nashua, but were you living in Nashua?
No, I was living with my parents. They live in a small town just outside of Concord. So I had just graduated college, and I had moved back in with my parents. And the first radio job I got, because I had like a few other like odd jobs, obviously, just to keep things going to make money. But first radio job I got was with WGAM, which was the station, and Mutt was there. Mutt was doing afternoons, and the first thing I got was Friday nights they would cover high school football games, and they would send people. And this was, I want to say, even before Twitter. It was like just on the cusp of Twitter, so I don't even think Twitter was a thing. So what you would do is they would send like 6 or 7 correspondents out to all these high school games, and then you would call in scores. You go on the air and you'd like report like live from Nashua South, blah 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 blah, and then you give the score, and then you'd call in, you give a recap of the game, and you call in the next morning. So that was like my first radio thing, and then so it morphed from that into they had a show that was only on from 6 to 7 at night. So Mutt was on from 3 to 6, and then another guy who he was like a sales guy, but he also wanted to be on the air. He was on 6 to 7, and they needed a producer or basically a board op. So they were like, hey, this guy's not bad doing the Friday Night Lights stuff. Let's have him do like produce and / co-host. So then I did that for a little bit. And then the guy that was doing the show with Mutt left. And then so I got bumped up to that show. And so for a while, me and Mutt did 3 to 6. And it was great because it was a small station where we could like learn what you needed to do. But at the same time, it was all the teams that I grew up rooting for and that I had like knowledge of. So it's not like I had to move markets, which a lot of people have to do. And like all of a sudden learn like the Seattle teams and try to figure it out. So it was a great opportunity. And Mutt was like a huge help. Mutt really helped me kind of move right along in there. He was great.
It's awesome to hear because we've spoken to a few guys in like local, regional, Boston media, and a lot of them have said the same thing about like getting their start and having a mentor and, kind of like their partner in crime who helped them out.
Yeah.
My question to you. So when I told my roommate, the one who's a big fan of yours, I'm just going to name him Corey Walker. He listens to the show. He's one of like 3 listeners, but Corey Walker and Scott McVicker. I hope you guys are listening to this one. I'm going to read a text message that Corey sent me today.
Okay.
When I told him that we were going to be speaking to you, and I want to see if you have a recollection of this story at all, or this question could go nowhere, and then we'll quickly shift to something else.
All right, lay it on me. I have a crappy memory, but lay it on me.
Okay. So he goes, yes, I was the biggest Keefe guy since the AM 900 days. We won Manchester Wolves indoor football tickets all the time because I'm assuming that we were some of the only people that called in to win family 4-packs. Scott would dance with the cheerleaders. I went to catch a t-shirt from a t-shirt cannon and lost my balance forward and bounced down 4 rows of chairs to the pavement. We'd heckle the other team, obviously. Start USA chants. We'd make fun of I'm not going to say this name just in case.
Fair enough.
Let's see here. Yeah. One of the details, that was the end of the message, but one of the details was that his friend Scott would get down into like the tunnel where the cheerleaders were and be able to dance down in there. I guess they would just like cause a scene.
Yeah.
In front of like
I bet.
You know,
Yeah, we
families.
definitely we gave away tickets to every type of minor league sport, and as you guys know, New Hampshire has them all. We had minor league baseball, we had minor league hockey at the time.
They're all playing the same place. They all
Yeah.
play in Manchester.
They're all right
Verizon.
there. There was a couple. We even had. I don't know if you guys remember. You're probably too young, but remember like the Nashua Pride.
Oh,
there was a baseball. There was like independent league baseball.
They were right in my backyard, Holman Stadium.
Okay. So we did shows from there. We had like some of the managers on, and the Manchester Wolves was like Arena 2. So it wasn't like the main arena league. Yeah. It was like the sub arena league, and like we'd have their coach on or like talk about it was I do remember that. Yeah.
Well, I do remember I was telling Soapy off air. My dad was a season ticket holder. My dad is a big Manchester sports guy.
Was he? Oh yeah.
He was probably one of 6 season ticket holders. So we'd go between those games, Monarchs games. Monarchs games were a blast.
Monarchs games were a blast. And we had a bunch of
time.
players on, and it was funny. Those guys all kind of took off. Like they weren't like all-stars, but they were like solid players, either with the Kings or they ended up getting traded. And like all of a sudden, I'm like, I remember talking to Mutt. I'm like, we interviewed like all these guys and they're scoring like 20, 25 goals now. Like it was pretty cool.
Yep. Those were good times. But the Wolves games, I'm trying to remember. I think the first year they were hot, like most like new things in town.
Yeah.
And then like you said, it's like, okay, this certainly isn't the NFL.
No.
And I was young. I was probably 8 or 8.
Yeah.
So cool. So it was like, I don't know, fucking Randy Moss going to be playing dad? Yeah. They're like, no.
But they had some guys. I remember looking it up. Like they had a couple of guys that played like major D1 and you're like, oh, okay. And then like they'd go, but it was like, it was definitely like a drop off even from the arena league.
Yeah. So that's cool that you even remember that. But I do like hearing those stories, man. Seriously, about like, you said you're working other jobs. It's based from the gist of what we get from a lot of guys we speak with, even guys like, not for nothing, we've talked recently with some bigger market guys like Boston Globe, stuff like that. And it's all the same story. It really doesn't matter where you are now. It's all the same story. But the other thing I wanted to ask you, so we mentioned about Nashua being kind of a common place between the three of us earlier. Are you familiar with the Nashua Garden?
Yes.
Bar and grill restaurant.
Yes, I am.
Nashua.
Yeah.
So we ask a lot of our guests this. Nashua Garden's famous for sandwiches named after athletes and sports people. I haven't been there in a couple of years. I don't think there's a Rich Keefe sandwich on the menu. Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Last time I was there was not. I think I got the Big Poppy. I don't think I.
Great choice.
Yeah.
Delicious. Yeah. Have you had that soap for real? It's like turkey, pepperoni, right?
Yeah, it was great.
A+. Yeah. So if things do go in the right direction and you do get your own sandwich at the Garden, what would the Rich Keefe sandwich look like?
Probably my go-to thing is like a hot buffalo chicken sub. So I would, with all the blue cheese on there, I'd have the range of all the heat, you'd have like, the mild, your medium, your hot, your super hot, you're like, can't stand it. I'd have all those heats. Just lettuce, cheese, whatever you would have on there. But that would be the thing that I would order, so I'd want that named after me.
Are you a leaf lettuce or iceberg lettuce guy?
Believe it or not, both. I can go back and forth.
Wow.
You have a lot of leaf lettuce maybe for like a couple of weeks, and then you want to go to the iceberg.
Gotcha.
Like
Great
a wedge
question.
salad. Yeah.
Sophie. Great follow-up question. Speaking of follow-up questions, I was on the iPhone app Twitter the other day. I don't know if you have it. I think you do.
Twitter.com. I use it on the desktop. Yep.
Oh, excuse me. Forgot about that. I'm still on the iPhone. But anyway, I saw you. I forget. Honestly, I forget what this is. Oh, I think it was in relation to the election, actually. You were making like a homemade margarita or something like that.
Yeah.
And it looked delicious, by the way.
Thank you.
And I'm curious. So since we've been in quarantine since just 2020 period, what are some of your go-to at-home cocktail?
This is a great question.
If you've made anything.
This is a great question. And the answer is yes. And it's actually funny. So when everything kind of hit the fan in March, I no joke was starting. I'm like, it was, the timing is insane. So I was like, I'm going to eat healthier. I'm not going to drink as much. And then like a week later, all this happened. And so that's been flown out the window.
Sure.
So I do like a margarita. And I made the one that I made was, you take tequila and then you take a Skinny Girl margarita, which is already pre-mixed anyway, and you use that as the mixer, and then boom, you have a great drink.
So there's no non-alcoholic.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Except for maybe the lime you squeeze in there, if you have one.
Oh, you wimp. Okay.
I'm a bit, I know. Terrible. Just to cut it just a little bit. Yeah. I love, I'm a big craft beer guy. So I love IPAs. Cool. So I'll go to whatever breweries and get a bunch, or like some of the stores around me have like a selection.
Where do you go?
So I love Idle Hands. Big fan of Idle Hands in Malden.
Where do you live now? Like
I live in Billerica. So I don't live far from you guys. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So but like that's closer to work. So like if I'm stopping on the way home or whatever like that, I'll try to occasionally make a trip out to Treehouse, which is like out by Worcester, but that's like the best beer in the world. Or even like Wegmans has a good selection. So I'll go to Wegmans and just pick up whatever. So I like that. I like a Long Island iced tea, a nice homemade Long Island iced tea, which is just all the liquor you have. Pour it into a cup, sour mix and a Coke, and you're rocking from there. I think the most I've had is probably either beer or margaritas. Those are kind of the easiest, quickest, like grab it and drink.
Yeah. So are you up in, cause I've since moved. My family and I live up in Portland, Maine area now.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's obviously a big, like a little too hipstery craft beer. It is, but once you live here, it's kind of like, okay, like
I've had it.
Thriving metropolis.
It is. Have you been up to any of the breweries or anything up in this area?
I have. Recently, actually, it was funny. I did. Yeah. I went to Portland last year and we were planning on going to Bissell Brothers and then we didn't. We actually went during a snowstorm, but we were already like committed. So we're like, we're just going. And so we went for a night and we just hit a few. We didn't go to any of the breweries that time, but we went to like a handful of bars that all had like all that stuff on tap, like, you know, Bissell, Maine Beer Company, like all that stuff. So that's I gotta get back there.
That's a better option.
So because you can sit there and try a bunch of stuff. Yeah,
exactly. It's more of it's a little too hipster for me. Like I remember, funny story. We went to Bissell. It was the Chiefs Titans playoff game, whenever that was, like 2 or 3 years ago, when Marcus Mariota threw a pass to himself.
Amazing.
And it was like getting close to the game. And I realized for the first time, I was with my wife. I was like, dude, like there's no TVs here. Like we need to leave, like ASAP. And then all of a sudden, this big ass projector just start like a 150 inch projector start filling down. I was like, okay, well, I'm not done yet. I was like, okay, maybe we'll stay. And they put on like
a fish concert.
Yes, more or less. for all extents and purposes, yes, they put on a fish concert. Sucks. And I was like, all right, check please, let's go. But it's a different scene.
It is, for sure.
And if you can get the same beers at a bar, and again, it's really not a sports bar town. It's really not. Like it's not where you go to watch the game. If you're lucky, they have a TV. If you're really lucky, they have ESPN. But that's pretty much the extent.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's fish. All the fish you want. It is, it's a good like beer snob town. But if you want to mix it with sports, which I would like to do, it's tough. Yeah.
Great pastime. Go ahead.
So Dan knows this place, but I'm gonna cuck him here and pretend that I live there.
Perfect.
If the next time that you go to Portland, go to Navarre Res Beer Cafe. I don't even know the type of beer that they serve, but it's pretty good.
Okay.
They make a crab rangoon grilled cheese.
Ooh,
phenomenal.
Wow. All right, that sounds good.
It's pretty good.
Yes, that's a recommendation. Tell them I sent you.
I will.
Charge you double.
Do I get a discount? Use your promo code. Is that gonna work?
Oh, yes. We're actually mid-negotiation with them for advertising.
Okay,
so no promo code yet.
Keep me posted.
But in all honesty, I don't think they have TVs, do they? I don't think they have lights.
I don't think they've ever considered
no Wi-Fi, no TV.
I'm not kidding. Yeah. Certainly no Wi-Fi. I think like their electricity is like one of the guys like on a bicycle, like in the basement. Like, it's just bright enough.
Bullets.
Yeah.
Drinking expensive beer. Like,
yeah. Right. But go ahead, Soap. Did you have one more to?
Yeah. Speaking of TV, Rich, I know you do the Dork podcast. Tell my friend Dan here why he should watch the show The Boys, assuming you've seen it.
It's the best show on TV right now.
Wow.
This show, I really think so. Last year, I would put like Watchmen and like Better Call Saul up there, but The Boys is perfect because The Boys is, if you like superheroes, it has people with superpowers, but if you don't like superheroes, it like flips the genre on its head. So it's like it's completely different than like what you would see with Marvel or with DC. It's awesome, and it's like, what is it, like 8 episodes I think each season. It's 2 seasons.
You could knock it out.
It's violent. No. It's funny. Like it's got everything you want.
And there's fish in it too.
Okay, I'm in.
There's one. There's one fish.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
That's a notable scene.
No, I'm not against it.
Okay.
That's the other thing about quarantine, dude. It's just like this list just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah, there's a lot to watch.
I know. And every 5 seconds, you have someone saying, "Oh, watch this. It's the greatest show ever." And then sometimes it turns out to be true. But
what do you want right now?
I feel like this one. I've definitely, I don't know if I've overhyped it to people who haven't seen it, but I'm like, I feel that strongly about it. Like, I'd be shocked if somebody watched it and was like, oh, this stinks. Like, I'd be like, all right, well, don't know what to tell you.
Especially with the opening episode, I won't ruin anything, but it gets right into the action.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is an old sports radio trick too, as all 3 of us know.
That's right. Well, you can't just, save it for that 3rd or 4th hour. You got to come out swinging. Everybody knows that.
You said violence and comedy. That's how many critics consider our show.
Is that what they say?
From our pilot episode. Yeah, they do. They certainly
sense.
do. But going back to your dork podcast. So what can people expect to catch on that show?
So we do a lot of movie and TV. Like we also talk video games and comic books, but it's way more skewed movie and TV. And then this was a weird year because we normally would see like whatever the big movie was per month, like in the theater, and then review it and talk about it. And so that went completely out the window. So we've sort of come up with some other stuff. We've had to make like different, like last week, for example, or I guess technically this week, we did essential movies for like, so me and my co-host Ryan Davey, who's actually also from Nashua. We talked about like movies for us. Like if you're going to be in our group of friends, here are the movies that we reference all the time, we quote all the time, and like you need to have a working knowledge of. So we just like rattled through a bunch of movies.
What are some of them?
So like we had Anchorman, like Anchorman's an obvious one. Star Wars, like movies from the MCU. Halloween and Scream, because we had a couple of horror movies in there. A lot of comedy. We definitely were pretty heavy on the comedy, but it was a pretty good list. And then it was also a hard one to make because then you're just leaving off so many great favorite movies of yours.
So I have a couple things. So what do you think about this coffee mug? It says, "I know Han Solo," and then my wife has Princess Leia. I love you, obviously. One of Soapy and I's favorite romantic sci-fi scenes of all time.
That is
it's usually how we wrap the show.
That is. Well,
I freeze Soapy and Carbonite and then put him in the closet till the next episode.
Classic. And then you thaw him out in the next episode, and there he's ready to go.
Actually, also, what do you think about some of our new merch?
I love the Ninja Turtles shirt. I love the Ninja Turtles font. That is good stuff.
Nice. And last question. I know we're coming up on time. Are you a wrestling guy? Did I see that somewhere as well?
Yes, I don't think I've watched it since they like didn't have fans in it, but I was obsessed
way before that.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I was obsessed with it, like, you know, all the way through high school, then took a long break. Then they actually came back to Boston for like the Royal Rumble, and a friend of mine had tickets. So I'm like, yeah, I'll go. I haven't seen it in forever. And then it kind of sucked me back in.
Yeah.
And since then, like, I'll watch WrestleMania and Royal Rumble, and that's kind of my working knowledge of it now.
Good call. I'm pretty similar. Like I grew up, I was like an Attitude Era kid, and even before that a little bit too. And you're right. Like I remember one event kind of got me back in a little bit. I didn't go live. I forget I just fucking watched it or something. And then I was like, all right, I'll follow this along for a little bit. We were talking the other day. It was I think it was a few days ago, it was the anniversary of the Montreal Screwjob.
Yeah.
One of Soapy's favorite Canadian screw jobs of all
Scandals.
time.
Yeah.
Scandal is a good way to put it. Yeah. Were you a big Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, like that kind of era guy, or were you more of an Attitude Era? Or?
For sure. Yeah, no, probably Attitude Era. I mean, I definitely watched it then, but I just remember everything like The Rock and Stone Cold and DX and then NWO. And like, so I was a big Monday Night Wars guy. And so I was the kid sitting there flipping back and forth between Nitro and Raw for like 3 or 4 years, and they were competing at their highest. Like I loved all that shit. And then it was probably around the time that WWF changed to WWE that I think I was kind of out. Like I think I might have been in college by then.
Big turning
like,
point.
You know, all right, like I'm gonna kind of lose favor of it. But no, I was obsessed with it. Like every Monday night, there was nothing better than watching that stuff for the longest time.
Literally not anything better. No. And then like those Tuesday mornings at school.
Oh my God, that's all you're talking about.
I would give anything to go back to those times.
That was the best.
This is an obvious year to say something like that, but
I would certainly this year puts it all in perspective. You're like, there's nothing better than that. And I didn't realize it at the time.
I would trade this year for, speaking of like acquisitions and sports and everything, I would trade 2020 for 1998 in a heartbeat.
Oh,
I don't even need another player to be named later. I don't need cash considerations.
Or even like just a month of it. Just a month of 1998.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Great. I would trade this year up to this date, outside of this interview with you, for an episode of Raw and Nitro, sitting on my living room floor with my action figures at like 9
not
or
knowing
10
what's
years.
going to happen and being like, I hope I don't miss something because there's no such thing as DVR. So like, I better not miss when Sting shows up. And then you're back. Yeah. Awesome.
Son of a gun. All right. So why don't you wrap us up?
Yeah. Last one for me. So first of all, quick note. I did notice that you said your favorite era was Stone Cold, The Rock, DX.
I heard that too.
For some strange reason, you missed Gold Dust, but we'll leave that out.
Also great.
For $10, would you rather let someone tombstone you or get hit in the head with a chair, like straight to your forehead? For $10 and bragging rights.
Who's doing the tombstone? Is it Undertaker?
Yeah.
So I would trust him because the tombstone, I would be if some just Johnny come lately was like, hey, let me tombstone you. I think he's going to paralyze me. So I'm not doing the tombstone. But if Undertaker, I feel like he'd be very gentle. And I feel like there's no way to be gentle with a chair shot to the head. So I would go with the tombstone. And it's a cooler story. Like I got tombstone. Like you got hit with a chair.
By the Undertaker.
Right. So 100% that.
You'd be surprised. Dan and I used to hit each other with chairs all the time, and it's actually much gentler.
Not as bad as you think.
The lasting effects haven't kicked in just yet.
Yes, no. Exactly. No, the Undertaker tombstone is well versed. It's the equivalent of like a veteran NFL linebacker who just knows how to tackle, just clean form tackles.
Wraps you up, puts you down. You're like, oh,
helps you up,
play another day,
gives you a little butt tap. Yep.
He's basically like a chiropractor. Like you wouldn't let anyone else try to crack your neck.
No, of course
not. You would let a chiropractor like
get in there,
like pull your head off your shoulders, because
if that's what it takes. Yeah.
But speaking of taps on the butt, we'll let you get out of here, Rich. Before we let you go, where can everyone? What's the best place for everyone to find you online if they want to continue following you?
Yeah, so you can check on Twitter, 2 places. I know that's annoying, but at Keefe21, that's more of my sports EEI stuff, and then at Dork Podcast, where I'm just constantly on there doing movies, TV, promoting the podcast, and all that stuff. So Keefe21 and Dork Podcast, and of course Dale and Keefe on WEEI every weekday from 10 to 2.
Nice, man. And when do the podcasts release? How frequent do you guys do?
We usually record Monday nights, and then they're posted late that night. So when you're driving to work Tuesday morning, you should have the podcast available.
If I see Ryan Davey in the streets, I'm just going to quote Star Wars, and hopefully he just thinks that I'm a listener.
He'll know that this guy, okay, I could trust him.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, man. This was fun.
All right, take it easy, guys.
Appreciate it, bud.
Thanks.